while people are joining, why don't you just pop in? I always love seeing where people are calling in from. People want to just pop in. I'll give away my location. Oh wait, I need to put that in the everyone. Here we go. Maybe someone else is in Boulder today. We could go for a bike ride. It's beautiful out. Where is everyone calling in from? Yeah, Philly.
I don't see an option to do anything but host and panelists.
You can't drop down to everyone?
No. Oh, there it is. Hurrah.
Oh yeah.
Austin.
There we go.
Andy, you're in Massachusetts, right? Yeah, there you go. You got Boston. You got some Mass. I won't finish my, Great, Baltimore, nice. We got some West Coasters joining Julia. Great, love it. Ohio, 2 from Ohio. Atlanta, nice. Love it. Little South representing. Excellent. Wonderful. Give people another minute or two.
It's always kind of funny to see who puts or which cities put the state and which cities are like, I don't need a state. Because for some reason, I actually added California to San Francisco, like as if, just in case. It's not San Francisco, Florida.
I thought about it with Boulder. I was like, is that obnoxious that I'm just supposed to expect people to know Boulder and I don't need to preface it with Colorado? Yeah, maybe, but I went for it.
Yeah.
Tampa doesn't need a Florida.
No, Tampa doesn't need it.
Dialing in from the Bay Area, the Massachusetts Bay.
Nice.
Got it. All right. Oh
my gosh, Amy, I'm flying to Canada later today. Not Edmonton, unfortunately, but the greater state of Canada. Just kidding. Where am I flying to?
Important to know, Julia.
I know.
Do you
Calgary? Oh my gosh, that was such a brain freeze. I'm flying to Calgary.
Nice.
Woo. Yeah, well, I'll wave to you.
Excellent. Well, wonderful. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining. I am the co-founder. My name's Lindsay Niels. I'm the co-founder of Elevate Leadership. And this topic of enabling managers to drive performance could not be closer to my heart. It is the reason Lucy and I founded Elevate Leadership. I've personally been a people manager for nearly 20 years now, not to date myself or anything. And I certainly can appreciate and empathize with how hard management is, like the energy it takes, the work it takes, the discipline, all of that. I have also can appreciate and seen like it really is the influence you have, if you will, in terms of how much you drive performance on your team and ultimately in the business is pretty profound. And I 100% believe the management is learned. So I am just so honored and delighted to be at the table with these thought leaders that we have for you today. So I'll introduce them. So first, I want to give a shout out to Mandy, who's the VP of People at Crossbeam. She is one of my favorite humans. She really is one of the most strategic operators. She is action-oriented and she is fun. And so Mandy, please say hello and maybe share why this is, I know manager enablement is near and dear to your heart, but if you want to add any color to that, please take it away.
Yeah, I'm here for a reason. Huge fan and advocate of both Lattice and Elevate for the work that they do in enabling me in my job and making it so much easier to partner with managers, especially on performance management and communication and enablement for that. So again, there's no mistake that I'm here today with this amazing group for that reason. And Lindsay said I'm the VP People of Crossbeam, which is a business-to-business data software, and we enable companies to grow through ecosystem-led growth.
Awesome, thank you, Mandy. And we also have Julia here, who we're very, very fortunate to have on Team Elevate. I feel very grateful that Julia is beyond brilliant. She also is a deep student of people and culture. She actually founded the People Strategy Group at Lattice, also ran people experiences at Medallia, and is just a real thought leader in the space. So we're delighted to have Julia here with us today. Julia, you want to say hello?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here as well. And yeah, I've been a manager. I've been managed. And I really, yeah,
at some point.
not everybody. There are the few who I don't know if they're fortunate or unfortunate, but I spend a lot of time thinking about and building for managers. And so I can't get enough of this topic. Thanks for putting this on, Lynn.
Betcha. And we are so fortunate to have Andy here, because if you haven't met Andy, which you probably have, because he also runs incredible webinars, but if you haven't met Andy, you've certainly read something that Andy has published or written. He is truly a thought leader on people and performance, and one of the authors of the report from Lattice, the annual People Strategy Report that we all love reading. And so, Andy, please say hello. Grace us with your words.
Ah, I mean, I couldn't have asked for a kinder intro. I'm Andy, Senior Manager of Content at Lattice. Have also worked with Julia actually, and I would say prior life, but it was just a few months ago. So yeah, so excited and thankful to be here. And the topic of manager effectiveness, manager performance is near and dear to my heart. It's something I've written about for almost close to 10 years now, being in HR tech and in the HR industry. Because when it comes down to it, our relationship with work, how we feel on any given day in the workplace, is totally dependent on the relationship we have with our manager, as well as the dynamic between us and our direct reports if we are managing. So definitely something I'm deeply passionate about and excited to talk more on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andy. So just a little thing, and I encourage everyone in the audience to participate as well. One of our traditions at Elevate is icebreakers. We just love a good icebreaker. We're a remote team, so this is how we roll. So I'm inviting you into the team traditions here. And so my icebreaker for today is, if you had to wear one t-shirt every day for an entire year, what would your t-shirt say? And please, if you wanna contribute, just pop it into the chat box. Does anyone want to kick us off?
I'll go for it.
Oh, go, Andy, go.
Yeah, so I saw an ad for so this is a real t-shirt. I saw an ad for it. Sorry, this is my first rodeo. And the reason I bring that up is it reminds me of my first job in high school. I worked at Sears, and there was a little attachment to the name tag that would indicate if you were a new employee. I had that on the whole summer just because I didn't want people to bother me with questions. So that is my t-shirt.
Amazing. I love the backstory as well. That's wonderful. Oh, you also, the ones in chat are so good. Yeah, go ahead, Julia.
No, I know. I'm a little distracted by all the good ones in the chat, but I think I'm just gonna say, if it wasn't going to be words, I think it would just be a dinosaur, because my wife is obsessed with dinosaurs, and I'm not gonna see it, but she's gonna see it. So I'd have a dinosaur on it. But if we're gonna go with words, I actually already own this t-shirt and I love it so much. It says, "Good grammar is sexy." And I truly believe that to my core.
If you know Julia, you know that sounds right. Love it. I love it.
Mine is actually a real one too, which I have a shirt that I should be wearing now, but says "as strong as the woman next to me," which I just love. It's like a subtle and good feel good moment for women working together. So, or even standing on the sidelines with the kids. It's a great message for everyone to see.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing. And there have been some great
Liz,
ones.
what about you?
Oh, mine, yes. Mine, yes. So mine is, thank you, Julia. Better or worse, mine is all in. Not the podcast, but just sort of how I live. And there are trade-offs, but that is who I am. All right, wonderful. Fueled by coffee. We've got that one in the chat box as well. Love that. Can resonate with that one. Yeah, right, there you go. Yes. Okay, great. So before we dive in, our goal is to make this as actionable and as helpful as possible for who is with us today. So with that, I would love to find out who is with us. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll. And if you could contribute, we would be grateful, because we will try to really be mindful of who is in the room, if you will. So what we're asking is just, what is your role within your company? So I'm going to launch this in 1 second. Here we go. Okay, if you can just take a second and just let us know. Are you part of the HR team? Are you an HR business partner? Are you on the talent side, learning and development? Perhaps an external trainer, facilitator, maybe another function altogether? Would love to know who is with us today. Super helpful. They're coming in. I know we're all in suspense. It's going to be great. Okay. All right, I'm going to give you 2 more seconds. Okay, great. I'm ending the poll now. Let's see who's here. Okay. So thank you, HR. Wonderful. We've designed this with you in mind, so I'm so happy you're here. Excellent, and good to see the variety. We'll be thoughtful about like HR business partner versus like an HR team of 1. So we'll be thoughtful about thinking about like the different scale of company and how you can adapt based on that. So really appreciate you being here. And thanks for the other functions that are here as well. It's awesome. Okay. So Andy is going to help set the stage for us today. Andy, could you please take it away?
My pleasure. All right. So let us just quickly go through. We've alluded to it a few times. Lindsay, you were kind enough to call me the author of the State of People Strategy report, but I would be remiss to not acknowledge my co-author in that, Halla Flynn. We have spent the last 12 months surveying over 1,000 HR leaders around the world on a whole slew of topics, running the full spectrum of people strategy, whether it's compensation, performance management, engagement, you name it. It was part of our survey. Because the report does cover a lot of ground, and we're not necessarily, taking a deep dive on compensation, for example, I'll just give you a quick overview of, just some of the key highlights that'll help inform our discussion today.
Thank you.
All right. And just to confirm, slides are advancing, right? Give me a thumbs up.
Yes. Yeah. You're good.
Great. Lovely. All right. So we've run the report every year since 2020. And obviously a lot has happened between then and now. But since the very beginning of us starting this report, we've asked HR leaders, just as a pulse check, what their top priorities were for the year ahead. This, does change a little bit year to year, but by and large, there are some common threads. Every year that we've run the survey, employee engagement has ranked first. There have been others kind of stepping in second and fourth and et cetera. But this year, what we found most surprising was that performance management had actually climbed to number 2, technically first, tied for first with engagement. Manager enablement, which is obviously, near and dear to what we'll be talking about today, has always been sort of the trusty standby at number 3. But performance management has typically lived much lower on the list of priorities. Just for instance, in 2022, it was as far down as 5th place. That certainly seems to align with what, anecdotally we've heard for businesses, especially in tech. Efficiency, maximizing ROI seem to be really top of mind right now in our audience. And HR leaders are being asked to drive a lot of that effort in terms of, performance management, investing in additional review cycles, feedback, you name it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are just some of the key takeaways when we looked at priorities.
Right.
And I think we actually have a poll that we'd like to
Yeah, I
run.
would love to see. Thanks for sharing that, Andy. And I would just love to see, just to get a pulse on what the audience is experiencing. I'm going to launch a poll now and would just love to hear from you as to how has the priority level of performance management changed in your own team just this year? So I'll launch this now, and I'm just curious, is it more important than 2023, same, or less? Let's see what we have here. Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. I'll get a few more seconds so everybody can chime in. Okay, I'm gonna now end this and share. Oh, people are still hopping in there. I don't want to cut anyone off here. Okay, seems to have settled. All right, here we go. Dun 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 dun.
Wow.
Okay, it looks like this topic and what you found is landing. It's resonating.
Seems to be the case. Yeah,
Yeah, seems to be
that's
the case.
pretty
Exactly.
definitive. And I mean, this report was published in January, so who knows? Maybe it's even skewed more so in this direction. So thank you so much for sharing that and for your responses there. All right, so like I alluded to, we surveyed 1,000 HR leaders on a slew of other topics, but I don't want to distract from our main conversation here. So please do take an opportunity after the webinar to check out the report. You'll see some of our findings around artificial intelligence. Definitely a hot topic. I think I was a little dismissive of it a few years back, and now it's hard to argue that it is a major player in work life in general. HR C-suite dynamics, to what extent do the two trust one another, believe that HR can make a positive impact on the business. We've also got findings around layoffs, disengagement, and lots more spicy topics. So please do check it out. And with that, we will pivot back to our main discussion. So
Thanks, Sandy. And also, Mary, kindly, thank you, Mary, put the report in the chat box. You can find it right there. Do have a read. It's excellent. So one of the things we really talked about as we were preparing for this webinar, and one thing that we quickly aligned around was the role that managers play in that performance conversation, right? And how do we really set them up for success? And so we would just love to first hear, what are your managers? When you think about your managers, when you think about yourself, what do you feel like the biggest challenges are that are facing managers right now? So I'm going to launch another poll here. And I'm very curious to see this one. So let's launch this now. So these, and if you could just please pick top three, I'll give you a little bit more time so you can think through it. But if you think about the top three, only three, pick three challenges that your managers face right now at your company, what are they? Thanks for sticking to three too, because I'm sure all of these apply. I have no doubt. I feel like I have quite the special viewing spot here because I get the preview.
I know. I was thinking that. I was like so jealous as you were watching. I'm like, I want to see them too.
Yes, yes. Okay, a few more people are logging in their thoughts here. I'm very curious. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. Here we go. All right. So as you can see here, having difficult conversation ranked the highest in terms of what managers are feeling most challenged around. Probably closely, maybe second, lack of time, change management in tough times. Yep, leading through change and delivering feedback. So tough conversations and feedback are, you can be related. So that's quite telling.
Yeah.
Stress and uncertainty, burnout. Okay,
You may
wonderful.
have just heard me
Yeah.
take a screenshot.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that
Right.
is
Please do.
super
Please do.
interesting.
Thank you so much for your input here. I'm curious, Mandy, you're really being at the heart of this, as a VP of people, anything you want to opine on, or like when you look at this, anything surprising or you've seen a lot in your day from different perspectives and different angles. Is there anything sort of like, I don't know, underneath this, or just would love to get your perspective.
First of all, these are always, I love these kinds of events because they're always really validating to like realize that we're all in it together, we're all going through it. And especially in the tech sector, like Andy mentioned, like, there's been a real shift in the macro economy and like what's going on in outside forces. And for some of our team and managers, they're really having to face change management and difficult conversations and more active performance management for the first time, or it's taking as we can see, a greater priority. And so, in my role, a lot of what I've been working on is going from like, hyper growth mode to real efficiency and ensuring that our managers have the skills that they need. And so, I'll give a shout out to Elevate's Having Difficult Conversations module, because our team responded really well to it, and you can use it in the moment, but to give them a framework. We love a matrix at Crossbeam. It resonates very well with our team, and giving them the framework to kind of take the fear out of it and make them feel like they're prepared with a plan, and in a way that can facilitate a respectful conversation and allow the person on the receiving end of the difficult message to keep their dignity, and all of those things are super important. But yeah, it's a new skill for some people who haven't faced this kind of constraint in the past.
Yeah, it's great perspective. Yeah, I agree with you. Also, we always talk about how, like, I think one of the reasons I'm deeply so passionate about enabling managers is just that it's like, if we can give people the confidence, they are that much more likely to go do the hard thing, right? And the way you get confidence is by feeling like you have a strong framework, by practicing. And so I'm glad that you see that as well, Mandy. Julia, you have an immense amount of experience enabling managers. Would love for you to share how, because given that, like, we know they're at the heartbeat, right? So like, how do we really set them up for success in a way that works, right? Like, they have so much on their plate right now, and just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, just looking at the poll results and seeing that lack of time, I think it tied for second. And that's really something that I have heard over and over again, and I have experienced myself. And so I guess my angle for at least this talk would be the sustainability angle. Like, how do we make manager enablement sustainable for them, and bring it to them in a way that really supports them in the moment for what they need and how they need it. So, so those are kind of like the three things that I would really encourage folks to think about. And starting with what is it that they actually need enablement on? It can be really, it can be fun to come up with these answers ourselves. It can feel really good to go and do the research externally and be like, oh, these are the topics that are, AI, it's the hot topic, like, let's enable our managers on that. Or just bringing external information in, or external data. But what we really promoted at Lattice, and what we really promote at Elevate as well, is the idea of like really polling your people, asking your people, getting that data internally. And so getting signal really from them versus the supposition that you might have from external sources. And so, of course, like, running a survey, gotta give a huge shout out for that. Running a survey that's going on a pretty consistent basis so that you can track changes over time. Huge plug on that. That's something that we'll always endorse. But then really, if you don't have that ongoing engagement survey, one that you could maybe add manager enablement questions to, or manager skills questions to, then certainly running a pre-program survey just specifically for your managers and the direct reports of your managers. We do that at Elevate a lot. That'll give you obviously the topics that are most important, but also a gap analysis in terms of what managers maybe think they are really good at, but their direct reports say help. And it also helps prove the ROI, right? And I see Mandy smiling and nodding. That is always, I'm sure a lot of y'all are smiling and nodding. Such an uphill battle sometimes. So having data certainly will set you up for success. Aside from the survey aspect, doing a listening tour can also be really, really helpful, especially if you have people that aren't so excited about filling out surveys. That can be, an issue. But we recently have a client that, or rather, we have a client that recently we did a listening tour with. I spent 2 days talking to leaders and to managers, really understanding what are the topics and how do people at this organization learn. It's massively expanding in size right now. And so some of the topics that came up, like certainly, yes, difficult conversations, but also how do I think about being a player coach? When do I expand my team to become a manager of managers versus a manager of just ICs? And so taking the input from that listening tour, we created a really different 2-day offsite agenda that is really, really specific to this company. And we actually took a lot of what we usually run in terms of workshops, foundational things like feedback, et cetera. And we created a channel for them of Elevate Academy videos that folks can go view on their own time, but like really stick to the topics that were very top of mind for them in the live workshops themselves. So that would be my first like big thing. Figure out your what from your people. And of course, don't be shy about killing your darlings. I know I always have darlings that must be, maybe not kill, maybe just like let them sleep, right? We don't have to be violent about it. But let them sleep until they're needed.
There was so funny, Julia, because I've told you guys about before there's a podcast I really like called HR Heretics. I really endorse it. And it's really practical and funny and real. But the word they use for like killing your darlings is like knitting your HR sweater. Nobody wants your HR sweater. Like it just cracked me up and like resonated so much, where it's like, why are you doing this? What's the reason for it? And what are you delivering back to the company? But framing it as knitting your HR sweater made me laugh.
Just like do it below the fold.
Yeah.
What was that, Andy?
I said I would love an HR sweater.
Oh, Andy.
You can order one on Etsy for you.
Yeah.
I love too, Julia, what you shared. It sounds like this, Amy, thanks for sharing too, how polling has been so instrumental in making those iterations and informing them. I think also like, it's a great reminder that actually we don't have to have all the answers, right? Like the answers are around us. They don't have to come from within. I think that's also a good reminder to managers too. It's like, you don't have to solve someone's career. Like you know what I mean? And so just a nice, like, remember, like actually just the power of asking and the power of listening, and the power of just like taking in what is around you and asking people and having people be able to be heard is just like, you don't have to do it all and you don't have to know it all. So anyway, thanks for sharing that. And Amy, thanks for chiming in as well.
Yeah.
I feel like too, one of the things we've chatted about is how, and given also the audience we have here today, is that relationship between managers and HR and, people team, however you want to name it, right? But like that partnership is so important and it's not easy. It's not always easy to build. And so I would just love to hear from Mandy, like her tips on, or how do you think about that? Like, how do you really build that partnership?
Yeah, I think, to kind of build on the knitting your HR sweater or your like pet projects, it's really focusing on what they need to enable their teams for the outcome that we're driving towards for the business, and like keeping that lens as opposed to having, sort of pet projects or those kinds of things, and getting, you know, in the mindset of the managers and what is on their objectives, what they're being held accountable to, so that they can drive their high performing team. And connecting it back to that is the way, you know, to not make it feel like you're getting, you know, people ops homework or HR homework as a manager, but you're doing things that are going to actually drive results, which is the goal, right? And so I think that, you know, the big thing is, you know, my career, I kind of came up through the business as a manager. I managed customer support teams for years at TripAdvisor, and made a pivot into people. But regardless of your path to this world, if you're in people ops, is establishing business credibility, ensuring you really know what the teams are being held accountable to and what the outcome, that the business focusing on the outcome just takes out so much unnecessary noise, and really helps you to understand, like, you know, what each individual team is driving towards and what's important to their managers. And ultimately, most likely, the managers that you're coaching want to grow their own career and having a successful team under them. So just really trying to frame that in the things that matter, and avoid unnecessary noise. And you know, to, like, again, like I'm here for a reason, is we're a really avid Lattice team. From our CEO, I think he was the first one to take advantage of like the one-on-one features, so that there's like consistent feedback and ongoing conversation. But something as simple as meeting our managers where they work in Slack and not creating additional, again, homework for them is like a total game changer. And just making sure that you're a multiplier and that you're really doing the enablement work instead of being a blocker.
Love that. Anything, and love to hear from anyone in the audience too. I'm just thinking, like, does anybody here have any recommendations on, like, how do you really go learn about the business? Or how, like, even if you're sitting down with a manager or your HR, like, what questions can you ask? Like, how, just any like really actionable tips. Like, if you were to leave this webinar today and you needed to go like recognize it, like, okay, how am I going to really understand, align with, so that I can be the multiplier, right? Just any advice on that? Any questions you really like to use, or how you go about it?
I have one thought, if I may, while the rest of you very wise people are typing. But the thought I had is around employee life cycle and employee journey mapping. I know that a lot of people teams out there do this, and I have so much respect for it. But I'm curious if everybody that does an employee journey map also does a manager journey map, because my guess is that it's only going to be a subset, but that is such a different cycle, right? And bringing some managers in and doing that workshop and actually figuring out, like, managers need to be thinking about their performance review cycle well before anybody else, right? And in fact, they should always be thinking about it and always collecting feedback, et cetera. But being able to identify where folks are in their manager journey, also not just like the annual cycle, but they're early in their careers as a manager, like they need a different kind of support than those who are, you know, moving on to being a manager of managers, et cetera. So that's one thought that I would love to see more manager journey maps in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We often think of managers as sort of this monolithic thing,
Right.
where, you know, they're all coming from different experiences, different backgrounds. Even if you were to, you know, run an analysis of manager sentiment, it would vary most likely between departments, teams, those who are earlier in their careers, those who maybe aren't. So yeah, I think as part of any sort of listening exercise or engagement survey analysis, just have that in mind, because it's super important, because all managers are kind of dealing with their own struggles in unique ways.
So true. Thanks, Andy. Anything you want to add, Mandy?
Just, you know, like it's so easy to put off tough conversations or performance management and things like that, you know, in the day to day. So again, kind of like demystifying and taking the scariness out of it, like, and understanding, I think for me, the managers that I work with are wonderful, and they just want to get it right. They just want to do right by the business and their teams. Like that's really all they want. And having just like an easy partner and, the tools, skills, training, all of the things to do that, I think takes some of the scariness out of those difficult or more active performance management conversations.
Let's, I'd be curious too, to hear, from the audience, like there were a few people that were in L&D, but just within your organization, right? Like who actually even has L&D? I'm just going to run another quick poll just to kind of get a sense. Hold on, forgive me. For what is sort of the L&D world look like? And you may not have L&D, which is totally fine. Just want to see. Why is this? Hold on, bear with me.
I mean, I've said this before, Lindsay, but Elevate is our L&D partner. So that really, again, talk about a multiplier. We have a dedicated in-house team, but no one specifically dedicated to L&D, which is the gap that Elevate fills for us, for sure.
We are very honored to do that. Yeah, let's just see. Thanks for sharing what your L&D infrastructure looks like, if you have it at all. Yeah, okay. I'll share people are still entering. Okay, I'm gonna give them one more moment. Okay, so let me share this. Mandy, you are not alone. So the majority of people with us today don't have a dedicated L&D hire in-house. Or, again, like that, at most they're a team of one, or they do have a team. Okay, but the majority don't have L&D. Which, I don't know, maybe you can even share more about, like, if you don't have L&D, like what do you do? We've talked about like the listening tours and figuring out what people need, but is there anything else, like guidance you could give to those who are in the audience who don't have an L&D team?
I'll just say that we, create like a calendar that basically aligns with, it's a mashup of Lattice and Elevate, of really is like, what does our year look like, and what are the milestones in a management cycle of the year? So it's reviews, engagement surveys, et cetera. And then creating a training calendar with Elevate content that prepares them for that next step and gets them in the mindset. So if it's, how to deliver an effective performance review or things like that, how to deal with burnout, like just a lot of different topics that we can mirror along with like the milestones that come up in our HR, in our business calendar. So it's like just in time and like right at the right moment kind of content for them. Has been a really successful way of approaching it.
Nice. So it sounds like you are doing that manager mapping.
Yep.
Yes. Well done. Yeah. And I think, just again, as we've all talked about, right? It's like they're so busy. So how do you meet people where they are, right? How do you be in the flow of work? How do you give them what they need when it matters? Because I feel like we're always trying to shorten that distance between learning and doing, if you will, right? And so the more you can get the content when you need it, or the framework, the more likely then you are to be able to apply that, right? Because it's needed at that point in time. So that's super helpful.
There's also a ton to be said about social learning, peer learning, and experience sharing between managers, and also experience sharing from leaders down to managers. And I think Amy said this up in the comments, but L&D can build, but leadership really needs to exhibit the behaviors. And so if you don't have an L&D function, how can you co-opt your leaders into that function a little bit, and really share their methodology, their frameworks, their resources, and just have the conversations nevertheless.
Yeah, love that. I love Anissa, thanks for sharing too, how you've created this Slack channel of managers where you can share resources. I think that's a beautiful idea. It's like same sort of building that manager community where, one, they don't always need to go to you. They can learn from each other. They can support each other. They also recognize that they're not alone, right? I think that can be really helpful, and we can all, like, that's a lightweight way to really build that. So that's great. Thank you for sharing.
And Lattice actually has one of those as well. So, as a manager, being able to go into that channel and really like leverage that community, super valuable. We have a training program that we internally call Manager Blueprint. And, while we had like a very detailed curriculum and everything was, from a content perspective, spot on, some of the most valuable moments in the entire program was just managers in the room with one another, because you absorb, you learn from one another, you exchange kind of what your challenges are, your troubles. And I think that is, when we talk about things like manager burnout and, just the emotional pressure of being a manager, a lot of that comes from, this feeling of not having that community to tap into, kind of suffering in silence, if you will. Hope that isn't overly dramatic, but being able to turn to a community in itself is like a great supplement to an L&D program.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I know as you're making me reminisce on thinking about that manager life journey. And I remember when I first moved into management, I remember thinking, like, I worked for this incredible deal guy. Like, he was really good at deals. And then I was like, but just Mandy, we were saying too, is like, people really want to do well. Like, I wanted to be a great manager, right? Like I wanted to do really well. If I was going to, like, it felt like a risk, right? It's like, well, I have to do this well. This is different. Like, and I don't have a role model to look at. And so at the time, I actually, which is absurd thinking about it, like I just asked her, I was like, if you want me to take this job, I need an executive coach because I want to do well. And there's like no one, but there's such a better answer than that, right? Like, that is not a scalable solve, executive coaching is wonderful. It's very powerful, right? But I just think, like, that moment too of, like, you don't know what you don't know. Like, I didn't know, I didn't need an executive coach, right? What I needed was, like, how to run a great one-on-one and, like, how to give feedback in a way that lands. And so, yeah, it's just, I think that at the end of the day, people really want to do well. So what are these, like, lightweight ways that we can really give them the confidence and the skills that to be able to just, like, be who they want to be, right? And operate in the way that they want to operate.
Yeah, and
So-
like, we ask our managers to, like, look at the calendar of the schedule that we have for manager training and things like that. And if there's something that really resonates with them or they feel like they excel at, that they can run our kind of joint training and our watch party and facilitate, which also just, we're talking about the credibility aspect. It's like a partnership then, and it's not a lecture. So whenever possible, I ask our managers to be the facilitators. And obviously, like, the content makes it really easy to do that. It's a lightweight ask with very little prep of it, associated, but really gets them involved in a different way.
That's a great, just to give context, with our classes, each class is a facilitator guide or a discussion guide. And so we enable that because that's, I love that. I'm so glad you're doing that. Also, it's great to show the advocacy, right? It's like you also get, like, a very senior leader or someone just has a lot of, like, political capital or influence, right? And they're sharing it and they're asking the questions. It can really just show how important it is. So love that.
Yeah, and the breakout cues and things encourage that peer-to-peer sharing too. So that you kind of get all the benefits there, but in a really manageable way.
Great. Wonderful. Well, I want to make sure that we also help who's here. So would love to know if there's any questions from the group. And so I'm going to do two things now while you're thinking of your question, and you can drop those in the Q&A. There's a Q&A little button, if you will. If you pop them in there. In the meantime, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to run one more poll, which is just to say that, so we don't spam you, we actually know if you want to chat. Hold on. Gotta get better at these polls. I will get there.
Good growth mindset.
Yeah, I'm working. Okay, so this is just if you want to pop your name in here, if you will, or just vote. Just if we or Lattice can help be a thought partner at all for you and talk through some ideas or strategies, whether you're, no matter what size your company is, we are here to help. And so if you want to just select that, if you're interested, we'll totally follow up and would love to connect on that. So thanks for doing that. I'll leave you a second, and then feel free also to start popping any questions you have into the question and answer, and we will get to those as well.
One that just came up in the chat,
Sure.
Lindsay, not in the Q&A, around Lauren asking about best practices to structure executive team performance cycles and accountability.
Oh yeah, okay, great. You want to take that, Mandy?
I guess I would love a little more detail on the question. You know, in terms of what you mean by executive team performance cycles, as opposed to just the whole company. But overall, you know, we create a calendar, and we hold people accountable to you know, I mean, again, you know, walking billboard over here for Lattice, but it, you know, Lattice makes it incredibly easy for us to structure that and to make it easy for managers to have that ongoing feedback cycle. And the other benefit is that everything's housed in one place, right? Like you can look at, you know, praise that they received over the year. You can look back on one-on-one notes. You can kind of have the whole kit caboodle there. So if that's addressing your question.
It looks like there's a follow-up. Thanks, Lauren. How do you manage executives' performance when they're on the board of directors?
Oh,
Yes. Trickier.
I mean, a lot of the time you're going to need to rely on their willingness to do that, right? And to get to do 360s. So, you know, I'm very fortunate to have a co-founder and CEO who takes the initiative to run his own 360s and do the work. And so some of that is a little bit, unfortunately, out of our control, but I think we can enable them to say, this is, again, like focusing, especially at that executive level, on the outcomes. So maybe you can frame it in your company-wide engagement survey, right? And say, here's some things we learned. Here's how you can influence that, or here's the outcome that, you know, I'm helping you to drive towards. And framing it that way is probably a better sell than just like, you should do this, or, you know, and what's in it for them. But yeah, it can be a tricky one for sure.
Yeah, Lauren, also just in the spirit of we want to help. So if you want to pull out your phone, we're giving you a free trial, but there's our class on how to have difficult conversations speaks to what Mandy's talking about, which I think is really like, it's how you set up that conversation. It's the intent in which you are sharing the feedback. And so I think most people, like, they do want to get better. They want to learn. And the farther you get up, like the less information you get. And that's why 360s are helpful, particularly like, just because you get that, you know what I mean? You're forcing it, if you will. But I think if you go watch that class on how to have tough conversations, it'll walk through a really good framework for it. And I think, like, just to underscore, it's like, you know, I know how successful you want to be. Like, I want to see you successful. I also reckon, you know, or something like, I realize that, like, you might not, it's really hard to get the feedback at the top. And I would love to give you some feedback because I want to help you if you're open to hearing it. And then just ask them, like, let them opt in to the conversation is another tactic there.
I'll also put in a plug for executive coaches, because that is one of the best ways you could have influence over executive behavior over a period of, you know, a good chunk of time. And certainly at Elevate, and there are other exec coaches that do this, the relationship starts often with a 360, where the coach will dig into a lot of that unvarnished feedback coming from other folks, and then talking through what the most important aspects of behavior change are for that exec. So if you're not in a position to gather the feedback yourself, or just like have heard through the grapevine but don't have the details, offering that as an option might be the quickest way.
Yes, so true. Yeah, particularly if you can get them to do a 360, like an interview-based 360, they will literally get feedback. Right. They will never ever be able to get on their own. It is quite, it can be quite life-changing for them. Okay, more questions here. How can we develop executive training programs that helps integrate new exec hires into the senior team and builds trust instead of organ rejection? Great question. Yes, this is, I think, just my 2 cents on this. I think, one, one thing that a lot of research shows too is when you're bringing in a new executive, one is like making sure like part of that onboarding is actually just onboarding into the organization, right? Like the organizational politics, the organizational norms, the like, so spending time there, just more I'm focusing on like the organ rejection piece of, if you will. Like there's so much research that it's not just, it's not just how the company runs, but it's really like just that the political landscape, for lack of a better word, right, that exists. Like, what are the landmines? What are the sensitivities? And the more you can do that, like the more you set that person up for success. In terms of the executive team level, I think this is something that can be done really well. It doesn't have to be on site, but like some sort of offsite where you're really enabling people to continue get to know each other. Because that really helps, like that vulnerability-based trust, like that really helps people understand how they like to work. And a new executive team member can also be like a good forcing function to do those sorts of things. That sometimes if you've like worked together for a while, you just kind of get into this rut, if you will. But it's amazing how people like often, even though you work a lot together, you might not actually know each other that well and like how you're wired. And there's a lot of like tools you can use to do that. But I do think like an offsite, getting to know each other at a deep level, and then sort of like also just designing an alliance or ways of working or norms based on all the beautiful fabric of the different personalities and ways of working that you have on the team can be quite helpful. Anything else? Anybody else want to add something to?
I think I would just add that all of that, but that your CEO or your senior leader is going to be incredibly motivated for this person to be successful, for a new executive team member to be successful. It's a huge investment of time, and it's a risk, right? Like it's higher risk than any other new hires. So getting their alignment in terms of like, here's what we can do to make this person successful, and then taking that a step further is like immersing them in the culture, but also like reminding yourself and the team that we brought this person on for a reason, so that they can be additive to the culture and that they can bring in outside perspectives and ideas and experience. And so something that I've recently done is, one of our execs sent me a LinkedIn blog post that really resonated with him, and it happened to resonate with me and what we needed to accomplish, and amplifying that and saying like, this is something that this person brought to me and I think we could use it here. Kind of reinforcing that like we are welcoming as a leadership team and as a company, your new ideas. And like, again, we hired you for a reason. We made this investment in this executive leader for a reason.
Thank you, Mandy. Andy, did you?
Not to be a Lattice billboard here, but
that's my job.
I do think, providing sort of that unvarnished look at engagement is super valuable for better or for worse. I think we probably paint a pretty rosy picture when the new boss or the boss's boss's boss arrives on the scene. But I think having that honest conversation, going through the employee feedback line by line even, or at least just giving them access to the dashboard, is a pretty effective way to introduce them to the good and the bad, the challenges, what employees in certain functions are maybe feeling anonymously. And I think that alongside any sort of training is super valuable.
Yeah, I go as far in my sessions when I'm interviewing new leadership or executive team members to share some of the highlights from our most recent engagement survey. And then that way you're kind of just, knowing what you're getting into on both sides, but really seeing how they react in that conversation to engagement survey data is really, really gives you a lot of insight into how they lead and how they think about those things.
Great, thank you. Okay, another question here. The best leaders in my department learned how to lead before they joined the company. As an IC that is eager to become a leader and to have an org of more capable management, how do I propel these kinds of ideas into the company culture? Great question. Thanks for sharing. I'll go real quick and then let's hear from others. But for one, just in terms of taking care of you, please do screenshot that and go watch those classes. There's literally a class on how to prepare yourself to be a manager. So take advantage of that, first of all. Anyone else want to share? I could share more, but
I guess I have a follow-up question to the question, which is it that your leaders don't find value in encouraging folks to get trained because they're already trained, and so they have that blind spot? And if so, in that case, I would really lean into asking the questions, running the polls or the surveys, and showing those leaders with data that like this is something that folks are hungry for, and help to relieve the blind spot, if you will. And then if that's not the case, if the case is that these leaders have a lot of excitement around leadership development, then again, kind of like co-opting them into the process and seeing what are their favorite frameworks, what are their favorite, like how did they learn what they learned, doing some sort of, a couple of hours session with them to put together the leadership framework at your company, because if they're doing it so well, how can others learn from them? Those would be just two ideas depending on which path you're on.
Yeah, I think like framing management standards that the leadership team participates in, to define what makes a good manager at this company and for the goals that we are all driving towards, is really helpful to get alignment and to make it part of their responsibility, not extra work, which sometimes is how it can be perceived. So what, at an offsite or at a leadership meeting, like what does going through a management standards exercise and trying to fill that out and make sure that everybody's on the same page as to what makes a good manager is like, it's the same thing with like, competencies, right? Like it gives everybody a common language and framework to refer back to, in terms of what we define as excellence.
Yeah, and then it becomes so easy to say, well, like, okay, so one of our competencies is communication and like really good feedback and being really open and honest about, and then that just really easily slides into, okay, well, that's the workshop that we're going to run.
And I'm a big believer in competencies across the board as a framework. Like we implemented them incredibly early, across being probably earlier than one would expect. And it's because when you're talking about, enabling managers to do more performance management, is like, let's make sure we're working from the right set of assumptions here. And again, sorry, but like we have ours published in Lattice, and there's a lot of like great library examples. So again, you're kind of enabling instead of adding extra work. But I will say across the board, even the managers that dragged their heels or it was their first time doing it, once they have competencies in place for their organization, they are so relieved and have so much more clarity on how to manage their teams and how to grow their teams and to performance manage. So I'm a strong believer, just check out Lattice's like library of competencies to get some inspo if you don't have any in place yet, but I'm a big fan.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Great. Well, any other last questions? Great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining, Mandy, Andy, and Julia. Appreciate it. And also just thank you everyone for joining and contributing to the conversation. Really appreciate all that you do. And please know, like I always feel this. I'm like, oh my goodness, like the role you play is just so critical. And I feel like it just often just does not, you are the unsung hero, if you will. And I just feel like it doesn't get appreciated enough. So I just want to let you know that for all of those in HR, L&D who did join, like we see you, we know how important you are. And yeah, we just thank you for all of your hard work. So thank you so much.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for hosting us, Lindsay.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Thanks, everyone.